Welcome to the Happy Mindset, where we use the power of language and storytelling to help you find your voice. Today's episode is episode number 49, and today's episode title is Cloud9 Living. So today I'm joined by Jordan Gross. Jordan is a two-time startup founder, a TEDx speaker, and a #1 best-selling author. His upcoming book, The Journey to Cloud9, provides a new approach to the personal development world by using fictional storytelling to reveal some of life's most meaningful principles. Jordan has been asking hundreds of people around the world how they live their lives in Cloud9, and he goes about sharing that information today. On today's episode, Jordan talks about where his Cloud9 concept comes from. He talks about how we can speak to different audiences within the personal development world. He talks about how diving into something is the best way to learn it for yourself. He talks about how to make your own decisions and create your own path in life. He talks a little bit about how gratitude, the effect it can have on your mindset. So I hope you enjoyed today's episode. I learned a lot from talking to Jordan about how he got Cloud9 off the ground, the Cloud9 Living. He's only about 24, 25. He's a young guy, so I think there's a lot to be learned from his story and his initiative and how he's going about making a positive impact in the world. He talks a lot about value, and that's the kind of the impression I got from him, that he likes adding value to the world wherever he can. So I hope you can take away some principles from this and start applying it and checking it out in your own life. If you enjoyed today's episode, I'd love it if you can give the podcast a rating and a review. That's how we can get the word out to more people, to make the podcast just get out there, and more people come across the guests and the information we're sharing here. So if you want to join the Facebook group as well, you can feel free and join that. That's a great place to ask some questions if you're feeling a bit stuck in your life. There's a lot of people in the group. If you want to ask some questions, and if you want to just give some thoughts on the episodes too, I'm always looking to hear people's opinions about the episodes and seeing what you want and what you'd like and that type of thing. So thanks again for listening, and I hope you enjoyed today's episode. So thanks for being on the podcast today, Jordan. Taking your time out today.
Dennis, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to chat, and I appreciate you being willing to invite me on.
Cool. So I guess my first question is, who are you and what are you doing in the world today?
Yeah, so my name is Jordan Gross, as you guys might or might not know. And what I'm doing in the world now is I'm on a journey to Cloud9. I'm on my own journey to discovering my own purpose, my meaning, what fulfills me in my life. And throughout my own journey, I am trying to help others reach their Cloud9 as well. So that's the specific or the general concept of what I'm doing. But more specifically, Cloud9 Living is the company that I created, and there are some different components to it. So the first piece is this fiction book that I'm working on called The Journey to Cloud9, which allows people to basically entrance themselves in a story of somebody who is trying to live their Cloud9 life. And it gives it a little bit of room for interpretation as to what Cloud9 means to you and how that life should or should not be lived. So there's a book that'll be out in about the next 6 months. Then there's Cloud9 interviews. So I'm reaching out to dozens and dozens and dozens of people, trying to speak a different language to people who want information based off of research and evidence, right? So I'm speaking to people, asking them about their Cloud9 moments when they've reached that pinnacle of happiness on a lifetime or a daily basis. So I've got these stories that I come out with, and I've also got these 9-question interviews as well that I do with people to share how they're living their lives according to Cloud9. Then I've got some Cloud9 coaching, where it's a formalized process where, to the best of my ability, because I think it is one of the most difficult things we can ever do, like I'm still working on it myself, is I help people find their passions, their purpose, their ultimate sense of meaning in this world. So I do a little bit of that. And then, like I said, I'm on my own journey to Cloud9, and a big way that I'm trying to share this with others is by going on 90 podcasts in the next 90 days, right? So that's how you and I connected. That's what we're doing here. And I really want to show the grit, the resilience, the determination, the relationships, the human aspect of things that it takes to start something from the ground up and gain some momentum around it. So I've been documenting this journey on LinkedIn and on my website. And that's what it's all about. I'm a guy who's focused on positivity, optimism, and the belief that we can live the lives that we want to create for ourselves. We just have to work at it every single day.
Hmm. There's a lot going on there. Where
Yeah.
did the Cloud9 living concept come from?
Yeah, so that's a wonderful story. I love telling this one. And Cloud9 itself came from a day in November of 2018, so not too long ago. And it was a Sunday afternoon, and my friends and I were watching American football, as we did on every Sunday. And, it's a bunch of 24, 25-year-old guys who most often we talk about some nonsensical guy stuff. But on this particular Sunday, it was actually a little bit more introspective. And an acquaintance of ours had passed away. I had just finished reading Mitch Albom's The Next Person You Meet in Heaven, which is a great, spiritual-based book. So our conversations got deep, and we were talking about life, and we're talking about love, talking about death, and it was just a very different feeling Sunday than most. And on my drive home, I was in an Uber, and we were driving on the FDR Expressway in New York City, and in the East River, I saw a boat, and the boat was called Cloud9. That was the name on the side of the boat. And normally, I would be the guy who wants to talk to the Uber driver, and I want to, get him out of, or her out of their daily routine, right? And I want to make them chat rather than sit in the front seat silent the whole day. But on this particular day, I just was sitting in the back seat and letting the thoughts of the day simmer in my mind. But because I saw this boat, I just had to say something, right? And I said, "Oh, Cloud9, that's a cool name for a boat, right?" And my Uber driver said, "Yeah, that's definitely a cool name." And I said, "What does Cloud9 mean to you?" And the way that he responded absolutely blew my mind. And he started talking about some of his favorite childhood memories where he was on top of the world. He started talking about the day that he left his home country to come to America. He started talking about the day that he got married. He was talking about the day he had his first child. He was talking about a career ambition that he pursued and accomplished, right? So little by little, he was telling me all of these stories. And I said, wow, there's a concept here. And there are these transformative life experiences we can all look forward to in order to lead our Cloud9 lives. So for the next 5 weeks, I outlined and wrote a manuscript based on my Uber driver's answers to that simple question. And that's where Cloud9 was birthed. And since then, I've been trying to give interpretations of Cloud9, not just based on the story that I wrote or the Uber driver's answers or what I think Cloud9 means, but rather I want to get the ideas from all different kinds of people as to what Cloud9 really is. So that's where it all came about. And that's how I've sort of continued on to even further establish what it means and what it means to everybody. Because, your Cloud9 is going to be different than mine, is going to be different than the Uber drivers, is going to be different than
I like
all
that.
different kinds of people. Yeah.
So did it start with the book then, the first part of Cloud9? And the book is actually a fictional piece of personal development. Can you explain your thinking around why it's fictional?
Yeah. So the book it's the Journey to Cloud9, and basically there are 9 chapters, and each chapter is a different cloud, right? So Cloud 1 is that childlike sense of playfulness that the character experiences, right? And what the book does is it juxtaposes 2 lives for the protagonist. And the protagonist, you can see this guy's life based off of the life that he actually lived, where he made decisions and led a life that was according to societal expectations and what the people around him thought and believed that he should be doing, right? But then I also show his Cloud9 life, where he made the decisions based off of his heart and his intuition, and this is the life that he could have lived, right? Mm-hmm. So the reason, to answer your question, why I wanted to do this is because, backtracking a little bit, for the last year and a half, I've been fully engrossed in the personal growth and development and self-help world. And my first book came out January 2018. It was called Getting Comfy, Your Morning Guide to Daily Happiness. And it was a traditional self-help book where I told stories about myself and other people. I had this acronym, COMFY, COMFY, which was a morning routine to help you overcome stress and anxiety. And I listened to podcasts every single day. I read books every single day. I talked to people every single day in the personal growth and development world. And for me, I was loving every single second of it, being this personal growth and development junkie, right? Just absorbing all that this world had to offer. But to other people, in explaining what I was doing, the pushback that I would receive always had something to do with, oh, I don't like self-help, I don't need somebody telling me what to do, right?
Hmm.
So I wanted to I wanted to get around that issue. And I believe that in the personal growth world, there are different languages that we can speak to appeal to different audiences. So that authoritative voice of here's what you have to do. This is self-help. This is what I say. That works for some people. And some people will eat that up and they'll implement those strategies into their lives, and that'll make a difference, right? There's another camp of people who want a different language of research and facts and figures and quantitative analysis. There's another camp of people who speak the language of personal anecdotes, right? But then there's another camp of people who love stories and they love to get immersed in the storytelling world. And that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to use my creative brain and create this creative outlet for people to read the story and say, okay, I see myself in this character. I see that because he chose to do X, his life went down, this path, right? But maybe if I choose what he didn't choose, if I choose what's based on his Cloud9 life, maybe then in my life I'll be able to feel a little bit more happy and a little bit more fulfilled. So that's why I wanted to create this story, is to provide the opportunity for people not to just be told what to do with the advice, but rather think about the advice afterward and then interpret and implement it in a way that was most fitting for them.
Hmm. What's your thoughts on experiential learning? I think there's a bit of experiential learning there, I think, what you're talking about.
Yeah. So my thoughts on experiential learning are it's everything. I think diving right in and exploring your curiosities is the number one way to find out the most about yourself. And for me, that's how I've lived my life ever since I sort of realized that I should be taking control of my life rather than having life control me. So I've dove into every quote unquote passion or curiosity that I've ever really experienced. And, for example, my first job out of my master's program was in the restaurant world, which I thought was going to be a passion and purpose of mine. So I dove right in. And then unfortunately, I had to learn that it wasn't. Right. So because I followed my curiosity, I was able to learn what I didn't want to ultimately do. And I think it takes a good amount, a fair share of this diving into experiences in a controlled and mitigated for risk manner. And then learning, okay, is this for me? Is it truly lighting me up? Do I want to wake up every single morning and go do this? Right. And you do that sometimes by learning everything that you don't want to do. And then you land on the one thing that you do want to do. And that's what happened for me. And that's what I would recommend for other people too.
You have any examples of like where you made a decision that didn't align with you, was influenced more by the environment and external, and a decision where actually it was more internal, just to get more clarity around what that looks like?
Of course. So when I was in college, like I mentioned, I was a guy who on paper, it seemed like total success. It seemed like everything was going right. I was doing what everybody around me was telling me to do. I was getting good grades. I had a lot of friends. I was, able to get the internships that I wanted, right? But I wasn't ever thinking for myself. And basically, an important thing about going to college is that you have these internships so that you can get a good job after college, right? So what I was told when I got to school by my peers, people in my fraternity, people I played soccer with, people who had gone through it before, they said, you know what, like get yourself into the investment banking world or the consulting world, get an internship so that you have experience, and then you're going to try out, interview for these full-time roles. You'll make a lot of money and you'll have a great life. Right. And that was the societal expectation. That's what other people wanted and thought I should do. And that's what I did. I got an internship in the finance world my junior year, and then I had a consulting internship, and it was never something that popped. It was never something that I knew I wanted to continue to do because it wasn't mission driven. I wasn't looking to make an impact every single day. So that's when I chose, because I was totally basing it off of other people and this concept I thought was success, which was the monetary value and the prestige behind what I was going to do. So that's based off of the external, but rather the internal was fast forward to this corporate restaurant world position that I had. And 4 months in, I said, you know what? I need to figure out something that I want to do. And every single person I talked to said, give it another chance, give it another chance, give it another chance. Like, you've only been here for 4 months. You can, 4 months is no time at all when you look at the grand scheme of things, right? And I just said, you know what? I appreciate all of the advice. I appreciate what everybody is telling me to do. I appreciate what society is telling me to do. Society never tells you to stay at a job for 4 months. They want you to stick it out, right? But for me, I said, this is this moment where I get to say, I'm going to do something different. I'm going to deviate from the norm, and I'm going to make this decision because I know in my heart that it is the right decision to make. And that's when I quit that job, even though nobody said, hey, you have to quit. So that's based on the internal. It's making the decision even when every single other person thinks that it's not what you should do. And then the way to reconcile it is by fully immersing yourself in whatever is next. So it's not about just quitting and saying, oh, I did it because of my internal drive and my intrinsic motivation, and then you just sit on the couch for months at a time afterward. No, it's you figure out what's next. You make an active and intentional and deliberate pursuit to find what it is that's going to be more aligned with who you are afterward.
Are there things you've done that only make sense in hindsight now? Skills you've developed that make sense now, that's why you've done it? It's helped you to get to where you are now?
That's a wonderful question. And I actually have never been asked that. So I think I can take any experience that I've had in hindsight and pick out the skills that I was able to develop in each and every one of those experiences, right? So, for example, I was an economics major in college, and I couldn't tell you one thing that I learned in economics right now, right? But I think what economics taught me, and studying that and actually struggling through that in college, it was the first time I got bad grades. It was the first time I didn't want to go to class. It was the first time I didn't really understand the material. So in hindsight, I think continuing and persevering and powering through that experience is equated to what I'm doing now. And every time I feel like entrepreneurship or this journey I'm on to Cloud9 is too difficult and I want to go back to the corporate world and get a safe salary, I just say, you know what, like, no, I'm going to choose what is the challenge, right? Because I could have left economics and pursued a different major. That would have been the easy way out, right? But no, I wanted to stick with it because it was what was difficult for me. And right now, entrepreneurship is difficult for me. And I want that reward at the end of the tunnel. And that proof to myself that I powered through it and I was able to achieve something great, even though it was extremely difficult.
What gets you through the most difficult moments? Are there any particular thoughts, or is there a mission and purpose underlying it that gets you through?
For me, it's all about perspective. And I have one of my favorite sayings is that, yes, serious things happen in life, but the way to respond and not react impulsively to them is by not taking ourselves too seriously. So I talk about serious things every day. I talk to serious people every day, and the concepts are so monumental in our lives, but I smile through them, right? And every single morning I wake up, the F in the comfy acronym stands for funny. So I believe we should be smiling and laughing every single morning. And this develops a perspective within me that says everything is going to be okay. It's a cliche phrase, but all the time, that's what's going through my head. It can always be worse. Other people are going through worse situations, and it's not a comparison game by any means. But for me, I know that I am in a place where I have accomplished so much. I am grateful for so much. And every single day I express those two feelings, and it's totally shifted and transitioned my mindset. And it's so quick too. It takes 2 minutes a day.
Were you always like that? Were you always conscious of focusing on gratitude and being happy, or did something happen where you had perspective and put things into perspective for you?
Yeah, I would say I have been always like that. And here's the story why. Because I was growing up as a kid who, again, it kind of seemed like I had it all. And even the story is when I was 10 years old, right? and I was a good athlete. I had a lot of friends, loving and supportive family. Everything was going great. You know, I didn't experience anything traumatic, and I was basically an insider, right? On the inside. And I went to lunch one day with my best friend, Eric, his dad, Zach, his sisters, Paris and Carly. And at that lunch, we had a server, a waiter, who was one of those guys who loved to chat with the table and bring over free goodies and get to know us. And it was a really great experience. And at the end of that lunch, the waiter comes over to the table and he hands Zach the check and he says, "So are these three yours?" And he was pointing at Eric, Paris, and Carly. And me, I was, you know, a happy-go-lucky, curious 10-year-old kid. I sort of piped up and I said, "Hey, that's right. Like, how'd you know?" So he looks at Paris, he looks at Carly, he looks at Eric, then he looks at me, he looks down at Zach, and then he looks at me again. And he says, "Well, them three are skinny." And I just remember my forever lasting smile turn into a frown for the first time. And I remember how awkward it felt. And I remember my friend's dad, Zach, even saying, like, "He didn't mean it like that, Jay." And in hindsight, like we talked about, I don't think he meant it like anything, but it's still what he said to me. It's still what I heard. And sure, I knew I was bigger than my friends, but it was the first time I heard out loud that I was overweight, right? So it comes down to that underlying issue. And then once I realized that I was different because I was overweight, in my mind, I was thinking about everything else that made me different, right? So I was cross-eyed and I had these big, thick glasses. I had long hair and I was commonly mistaken for a girl. And my last name is Gross, Gross. So everybody was already saying ew before they even knew who I was, right? So as a kid, those can be some pretty damaging traits. But it was in that moment, and again, I don't know what it was. I attribute it to my support system, my friends, my family, my experiences with my coaches, everything like that. I kind of said, like, okay, I can either cry and self-pity here, or I can embrace these things and use them to my advantage, right? So I continued to excel in athletics because I was bigger than everybody else. I had these nerdy looking glasses, so I said, hey, like, why not be a nerd and love school? And that got me incredibly studious, and I became a great student. My last name was Gross, and people were already going to laugh at me. So I said, you know what? I'm not going to let them laugh at me. I'm gonna laugh with them, right? So I became known as one of the funny guys. And my long hair, well, I cut it eventually, so that one, you know, maybe I changed a little bit. But anyway, there were all these seemingly negative characteristics that I had that I was able to really turn around and use to my advantage. And it's really always been like that. I'm fortunate enough and blessed enough to not have experienced tremendous amount of trauma in my 24 years here, but I've definitely faced adversity. You know, my dream was to play soccer and get recruited at a D1 college. That didn't happen, but I found a different way in. My dream was to make a lot of money as a consultant, right? And I applied for a couple of jobs coming out of school, and that didn't happen. But then I found a different route, and I figured out what was best for me. I thought my passion was in this restaurant world, so I got a really good job, and I thought everything was figured out. And then I realized it wasn't for me. But then right away I said, what's next? How can I fix this? What can I take away from these experiences? You know? So it's always seemed, at least, like things were going right for me. But there have been a tremendous amount of obstacles. But because those obstacles I viewed more so as opportunities to learn and take away the transferable skills, that's why I'm the person that I am now. And that's why I can speak with such optimism and clarity.
Mm. That's really good. Yeah. So you're looking at the positive sides. You're shifting your mindset from that early an age on things. Positive too.
Yeah.
So when did the first book come about? When did you have the urge to write the first book? And yeah, where did the urge come from?
Yeah. So for me, one thing, and for your listeners as well, for me, it's never just about taking in information and letting it sit there, right? It's always been about hearing information and then asking myself questions. That's one. And number two, when I get self-help information, it's implementing it into real life and then reflecting on it. That's number 2. And then number 3 is what small tweaks can I make to this idea to make it my own, right? So I'm always thinking, I'm always trying to use my creative juices to, yes, like fully absorb the ideas, but then make them my own, right? So that's what I was doing it was basically during my master's program, my senior year of college, even the year before. I was listening to some podcasts, reading some books, and I was just stream of consciousness, writing things down in a Word document, based off the ideas that I heard. I was writing stories that reminded me of the ideas. And little did I know, when I quit my job in November 2017, I had like 75 pages of a Word document ready to go, So I polished that up. I added some more concepts. I obviously structured it into a book. And then when I quit the job, the characteristics that I wanted to make sure were going to be involved in my next experience were adding value to others without expecting anything in return. It had to be about building and growing and maintaining relationships. And it had to be about the thrill of starting something and making an impact and watching it grow from nothing, right? Because that was what was truly lighting me up. So with those 3 things, I said, how about writing a book and sharing this with the world and seeing what kind of impact it can make? And that's when I did it. So I was able to come out with the book the next month. And then for the last year and a half, I've been doing podcasts. I've been doing speaking engagements to high schools, colleges, startup companies. I've done a little bit of one-on-one coaching, all about this overcoming stress and anxiety.
And did the book help you to gain clarity on what actually worked for you up until that point?
Oh yeah. Writing a book is the most it's the most self-reflective, introspective experience you could have. And it is probably the best learning process you can have about yourself too, right? Because you're constantly diving deep into your thoughts, your experiences, people that you've met, all this good stuff. So absolutely, 100%. Yeah.
And where did the TEDx talk come about then?
Yeah, so the TEDx talk, like everything in my life, came from relationship building and communication and outreach, right? So I had this goal to speak on the TEDx stage. And as you may or may not have realized by now, I'm always trying to think a little bit differently, right? So there's a great book that just came out called The Third Door, right? And, the first and second door in getting a TEDx talk would be find a TEDx event and apply to the TEDx event, right? And hopefully you get in. But I decided to take the third door for this TEDx talk. And logistically, I wanted it, basically TEDx events get speakers 3 to 5 months in advance. So I looked at talks that were 3 to 5 months from when it was, and this was like December, and my talk was in April. So that made my list. And I'm in New York, so I didn't want to fly anywhere. So it was within 3 to 5 hours driving distance of where I currently am, right? So then I had a list of talks, and on the TEDx website, you can find the people who organize the events. So I found these people, and I found them on LinkedIn, and I did some research on them, and I decided to reach out with a personal message. So I reached out to these people with a personal message having nothing to do with TEDx at first. And then some of them responded, some didn't. And the ones that responded, I would continue the conversation coming from a place of curiosity and trying to add value. And little by little, one conversation turned into, hey, you can apply on our website. Another one turned into, hey, you can apply on our website. And I applied on the website even after having these, relationships made, and I didn't get those talks. But one actually turned into, hey, I realize you're a TEDx organizer. I speak on XYZ categories. I would love to be considered. And then she told me the theme of her talk. And I said, oh, that's amazing. I can relate the talk that I've already been giving to that theme based off of blah, 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 blah. And I was able to just sort of be fully aligned with what she wanted her audience to receive. I was coming from a place of value, like I mentioned, and we had developed a really genuine connection. So without the application even, she asked me to come be a speaker at her TEDx event, and then we worked together to polish up that talk. And then April 5th, I gave my first TEDx talk in Clinton Middle School in Clinton, New York.
And a lot of key messages there. Personal touch, the adding value. What was the title of the talk?
Yeah, so it was called Getting Comfy with the Uncomfy. And it's all about how to, so often we're told to get outside our comfort zones. I couldn't agree more, but that's hard for people, man. That's difficult. You know, you could say get outside your comfort zone all you want, but once you're actually in the moment, it's very hard to go ahead and do it, right? So the talk was split up into three components. And the first part was, first, you have to get comfy, going back to my book, you have to get comfy, get comfortable with who you are as a person. So it comes from within, right? So that's about embracing your differences and not being afraid to be weird or be unique. So that was number one. And number two then was, once you are comfy with who you are, you must deliberately get uncomfy, right? So you need to seek out different opportunities where you know you're not necessarily going to enjoy every single minute of it, right? So that was number two. And then number three said, once you have gotten comfy in your own skin and you're trying to get deliberately uncomfy, number three says, here is how you get comfy with the uncomfy. And that's the 5-step implementable COMFY acronym that I created to have this mindset of I guess, ease when going into anything that is stress or anxiety inducing.
No, I like that. So you
Yeah.
start with getting comfortable in your own skin first and then getting uncomfortable. I think a
Yeah.
lot of people forget that first step, actually getting comfortable in your own skin, because I feel that will direct you in the right direction to look at getting uncomfortable rather than doing random stuff that don't make any sense to you.
Yeah.
Cool, that's cool, man. So, like, from speaking to you, like, how do you combine your analytical brain with your intuition? How do you find the balance there?
Yeah. So it's about these languages that I talked about, right? And appealing to different types of audiences and honestly choosing the ones that I think I can make the most impact on. So I know myself enough. I've gotten comfy enough in my own skin to say, I am not going to be the person who gives people facts and figures and quantitative analyses and numbers to show them how the advice that I have is going to make a difference in their lives. That's not me. There are other people out there who are going to be way better at that. For me, what I've realized is through storytelling and through creativity and through really putting in a lot of work, that's how I can show people what it takes, right? So that's why I am doing the 90 podcasts. That's why I am interviewing dozens and dozens of people and getting their interpretations. And that's why I am writing these stories that more or less don't tell you what to do at all. They provide the different routes, I guess, that a character can take if they choose one path or another, right? So I combined what was best for me. It's really asset based, knowing what I'm best at, and sharing that with other people.
Come back to knowing yourself again now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, it's I like the storytelling aspect, and I like the I do think my own perspective too. I'm going on my own individual journey. There's like lessons that are universal, but it's like telling your story
Yeah.
to help somebody else find their own story and their own path. I like the message.
Exactly.
So how would these guys find you if they want to find out more about you and what you're doing?
Yeah, so I keep it super simple. JourneyToCloud9.com. That's all spelled out. Journey, TOCloud9.com. And on there, you'll find the 90-second videos of people describing their happiest moments. You'll find the 9-question interviews of how you can attain Cloud9. You'll find my journey to Cloud9 with the 90 podcast. You'll find out about this upcoming book. You'll find out about the last book. You can find out about the coaching that I do. And also you can connect with me. So feel free to email, text, reach out on LinkedIn to me at any time. And also on that journeytocloud9.com website, throw your email in there, and every Tuesday and Thursday you receive one of those Cloud9 90-second videos of a different kind of person explaining their Cloud9 moment, either throughout their lives or throughout their every single day. So journeytocloud9.com, it's that simple.
Perfect. Do you have any last bit of advice for somebody looking to find their own path in life?
I do. I would love to say to people the question that, or the belief that I have whenever I'm thinking about a decision to make or a big step to take on my journey, right? And that is that I fear the what if more than I actually fear the what, right? So there's this notion that on my last day on this earth, my greatest fear is that the person who I became will meet the person who I could have become. And it terrifies me to think that those two people could be so different. So I live my life based off of who I could always become, right? So that's what I would say for you. Don't let that fear of what if sit in the back of your brain. Actually do something about going ahead and doing the what rather than focusing on, the fear that's associated with the doing of something.
Cool. That's a good message,
Yeah.
Jordan. Cool. So thanks for taking your time today. Thanks for telling us more about Cloud9 Living and your books. And yeah, best of luck with everything in the future and your 90-day challenge as well.
Yeah, Dennis, thank you so much for having me on, man. This was an absolute pleasure, an absolute joy, and your time is truly valued. So thank you again.
Thanks, man. So until next time, have fun and enjoy the process.